Harper, Joyce's own daughter-in-law, scoffed, "She doesn't own this place." Then Joyce, the mother-in-law they mocked, dropped a legal envelope on their dinner table. Jason, her only son, opened it and turned pale. "She's evicting us," he choked. Joyce didn't raise her voice. She just watched them, wearing silk, not shame. They had laughed at her. Now they were packing their lives under her roof. Wait, before we go any further, I gotta ask, where are you watching from? Drop it in the comments and don't forget to subscribe. It wasn't the laughter that hurt. It was who joined in. The laughter drifted in like smoke, thin, creeping, and hard to ignore. Joyce stood at the edge of the hallway, half in shadow, her hand tightening around the chipped porcelain mug she hadn't replaced in years. The scent of burned toast lingered in the air, but it wasn't the kitchen's failed breakfast that twisted her stomach. It was the voices in the living room, bright, amused, slicing through the quiet of the morning. "Is she seriously still wearing that thing?" Harper's voice carried easily. Her tone was just on the edge of cruelty, like a knife being turned slowly. "It looks like a curtain from a 70s motel." The other women laughed, their wine glasses clinking mid-morning, their faces blurred by the frosted glass wall Joyce had installed herself, back when this was her home, not just her roof. "I think it's kind of iconic," one friend giggled. "Like, maybe she's going for that mystic housekeeper aesthetic." "Oh my God, stop," Harper laughed harder. "No, really, I swear it's held together with hope and lint. I bet she's had it since before Jason was born." And then he said it, the voice that stopped her breath cold. "Jason. Hey, don't knock it. That robe's seen more sunrises than a lighthouse." Laughter erupted again. Full, unrestrained. Joyce didn't blink. Her fingers unclenched from the mug, gently setting it on the side table like she was afraid it might shatter from the weight of what she'd just heard. She didn't step into the room. She didn't defend herself. She just walked back toward her part of the house, though calling it a part was generous. It was a converted storage room with no windows and a door that creaked like an apology every time it opened. Inside, she sat on the edge of her twin mattress. Her robe, faded maroon cotton, the cuffs unraveling, fell around her like soft armor. She ran her fingers across the fabric, pausing at a stitched edge near the collar. The thread there was blue, clashing with the maroon. It was the only part she hadn't sewn herself. 27 years ago. She had been 28, working double shifts as a nurse's aide while Jason napped in a car seat under the reception desk. The robe was a gift from her supervisor at the time, Mrs. Eleanor Bristol, the hospital's head of operations. "Something soft for your hard days?" Eleanor had said, tucking a handwritten card in the pocket. Joyce had never told anyone, but she'd cried that night while folding the robe for the first time. Not because it was expensive, it wasn't, but because someone saw her. Because in a world of fluorescent lights and aching backs, that soft fabric had meant, "You matter." And now it was a joke in her own house. Her fingers moved to the small cedar box on the corner shelf. It still smelled faintly of eucalyptus when she opened it. Inside lay a yellowed envelope, stamped and sealed with a heavy red wax. It had arrived 2 weeks ago, addressed in an elegant, familiar hand, Mrs. Joyce Bennett, personal and confidential. She hadn't opened it, not until now. The wax cracked like a whisper. Inside, a brief letter and a business card with a gold-embossed logo. Langston and Meeks, LLP, Estate and Inheritance Law. Joyce read the letter slowly. Eleanor Bristol had passed peacefully in her sleep 3 weeks ago. Joyce had been mentioned in her final directives. "A sealed document is to be read in person only," it said. Beneath it was a number. She stared at the phone for a long moment. Her thumb hovered over the dial like it might burn her. In the living room, laughter still bubbled, fading now into clinks and murmurs. The kind of noise that forgets people like her exist in the walls. She pressed call. The line rang once, twice. "Langston and Meeks, how may I direct your call?" Joyce's voice didn't tremble. "I need to speak to someone about a letter. It's regarding the late Eleanor Bristol." "One moment, please." Hold music. A faint piano melody. And then a warm, deliberate voice answered. Mrs. Bennet? Thank you for calling. There's quite a bit we need to discuss. You may want to sit down for this. Joyce didn't sit. She smiled. She dials a number connected to a potential inheritance. She left me a goodbye and a beginning. Mrs. Bennet, the voice on the phone said, measured and calm. My name is Andrew Langston. I was Eleanor Bristol's estate attorney. I'm calling to inform you that she left behind a sealed document, one that requires your in-person acknowledgement before it can be opened. Joyce tightened her grip on the landline's receiver. The cord twisted in her hand like a snake mid-coil. Outside her room, the sound of a blender roared through the kitchen. Someone was making smoothies. Joyce hadn't eaten yet. What kind of document? She asked, her voice low, like she didn't want the walls to hear. I can't say over the phone, Langston said. It's part of her final wishes, but she was very specific. This isn't to be mailed or discussed remotely. You must come to our office in the city. Joyce blinked. The city. That was 2 buses and a walk. Maybe 3 hours each way, if she didn't miss her connection. I understand that may be inconvenient, Langston added gently. But I assure you, it's worth your time. She hung up a few minutes later, the lawyer's address scribbled onto the back of a coupon. Her hands shook, but not from fear, from possibility. She stepped into the kitchen, her robe catching on the corner of a drawer left ajar. Harper was perched on a stool, scrolling through her phone, legs crossed neatly in leggings branded with a logo Joyce couldn't name. Jason stood at the counter, pouring something green into a shaker. Jason, Joyce said, clearing her throat, do you think you could give me a ride into the city tomorrow? Just for an hour or two. It's important. Jason didn't look up. What's in the city? A law office, she said. It's about Eleanor Bristol. Her attorney called me this morning. There's a document. She left you something? Jason finally turned, eyebrows raised, skeptical. Like what? A thank you card? Harper snorted behind her coffee mug. Joyce stood still. I don't know what it is, but they said it has to be opened in person. Jason gave a half shrug. Yeah, I'm slammed tomorrow. Harper's car's got that engine light on again, and I've got back-to-back meetings. Joyce waited. He didn't elaborate. So, no? She asked quietly. He turned back to his smoothie. I'm sure you'll figure it out. Harper didn't even glance up from her phone. You always manage, Joyce. That's kind of your thing, isn't it? Joyce nodded once and walked back to her room, her feet soundless on the hardwood. Her eyes burned, but not from tears, from something harder, deeper, like concrete drying behind her ribs. The next morning, she left before the sun was fully up. Her robe was gone, replaced by a muted gray cardigan and slacks she hadn't worn in years. She took the first bus, then a second, winding through neighborhoods she barely recognized anymore. The air in the city smelled like exhaust and fried food, and something about it stirred old memories of night shifts and cheap coffee. The office of Langston and Meek sat in a glass building with gold lettering and marble floors. When she stepped inside, the receptionist greeted her by name. Mr. Langston will be right with you, she said, offering tea. Joyce sat down, fingers laced in her lap, knees close together like a girl at her first interview. 10 minutes later, a tall man in a navy suit stepped into the waiting room. His voice was warm but formal. Mrs. Bennet, thank you for coming. I understand this is sudden. Joyce stood. He guided her into a conference room with floor-to-ceiling windows and a single sealed envelope placed precisely at the center of a long walnut table. As she sat, he slid it toward her. This, he said, tapping the envelope gently, is a personal directive from Mrs. Bristol. You were very dear to her, Mrs. Bennet. She wanted you to have this, unfiltered and with full context. Joyce's fingers touched the envelope's smooth surface. Her breath caught. Langston's gaze softened. You may want to sit down for this. She already was, but her world was just about to stand up. The lawyer says, You may want to sit down for this. They said I should feel lucky to live here. I built this life for them. The laughter was back, thin, tinny, echoing off the walls like it didn't need permission. Joyce lay on the narrow cot in what used to be a storage room, staring up at the exposed light bulb above her. It flickered now and then, as if trying to blink away what it saw. The walls were bare except for a dented coat hook and a plastic shelf lined with expired vitamins and old birthday cards. The air smelled like mothballs and cold dust, like time had forgotten to move forward in here. Through the door, slightly ajar, she heard the muffled clink of wine glasses and the familiar whine of Harper's voice. "I mean, if we're being real," Harper said to her friends, "she's basically a boarder, right? She gets free food, free electricity. If anything, she should be paying us." Someone giggled. "Do you make her do chores or just let her haunt the hallways?" Joyce pulled the blanket tighter over herself, even though the room was stifling. No windows, no air, just her breath and her memories. She closed her eyes. 15 years ago. Jason was sitting at the old wooden dining table in their rental apartment, tears in his eyes, hands in his hair. The bank had called. The down payment wasn't enough. The seller was backing out. "I tried, Mom," he said. "I really thought I could swing it. Harper's so excited. I don't know how to tell her." Joyce had nodded, walked to her room, and returned with a lockbox. Inside was everything she'd saved from 2 decades of double shifts, every overtime hour, every skipped vacation. She had been quietly preparing for a tiny condo of her own someday, just enough for one. Instead, she handed it all to him. No mother should live alone, she'd told him, kissing the top of his head. Jason had cried. Joyce had smiled. Now that same house buzzed with the voices of people who didn't even know her name. Joyce sat up slowly, her knees cracked, the only sound she allowed herself to make. She reached beneath the cot, pulled out a small blue canvas pouch, and opened it. Inside was a brown leather-bound journal. The pages were stiff with time. She hadn't touched it since the year Jason graduated. She ran her fingers over the first page, where her own handwriting stared back at her in faded ink. "What I build, I will not apologize for." That night she wrote again. She wrote about the robe, about the lawyer, about Eleanor, about how she had no idea what was coming, but that something inside her had started shifting. Slow and quiet, like frost turning into glass. By dawn, she was dressed and waiting at the bus stop with a ticket in her cardigan pocket. She hadn't asked Jason this time. She wouldn't again. The city greeted her with the same rusted scent of subway metal and roasted chestnuts from a nearby vendor. She walked into Langston and Meeks like she belonged, because she did. Andrew Langston was waiting. "Are you ready?" he asked gently. Joyce nodded once. No small talk. No tea this time. He guided her to the same conference room. The envelope waited on the table. Langston slid it across again. "You can open it." Her fingers broke the seal. Inside was a handwritten letter and a single notarized document. The letter, scrawled in familiar cursive, read, "Joyce, you once saved my life without knowing it. You made those final years more than bearable. You made them beautiful. This is my way of making sure the world remembers who you really are." Langston turned the final page toward her. "This," he said, "is a copy of Mrs. Bristol's final amendment to her estate." Joyce blinked. "You," Langston continued, "are the sole heir. All assets, properties, trusts, investments, total value estimated at just under $5.8 million. The breath Joyce had been holding escaped her lungs like it was too heavy to carry anymore. She didn't speak. She didn't smile. She just sat very, very still. The lawyer reads the will. Joyce is sole heir to $5.8 million. Joyce is now secretly wealthier than everyone in the house combined. They mocked my robe. They'll never see what I wear next. The front desk smelled like bergamot and power. Polished floors gleamed beneath Joyce's shoes as she stepped into the Grand Albrecht Hotel, its golden chandeliers dripping elegance, casting soft halos over imported marble and hushed conversations. Bellboys moved like shadows in pressed uniforms, every motion deliberate, silent, reverent. Joyce stood still for a breath too long. She clutched the strap of her worn handbag like a lifeline, the elevator doors reflecting her cardigan and scuffed shoes. She looked like a misplaced shadow in a world meant for light, but she didn't lower her gaze. "Welcome to the Albrecht?" The concierge smiled, his voice like velvet. "Name, please?" She straightened her shoulders. Joyce Bennett, I reserve the park suite for the week, under my name. The man blinked, checked the system, and then gave a small bow. Yes, everything's prepared. Let me take your bag. For a second, her instinct was to pull it back, decades of guarding everything that was hers. But she let it go. The elevator ride to the 28th floor was silent. Too silent. The kind of silence that made her realize how much noise she'd lived under. Laughter that wasn't hers, demands disguised as kindness, ceilings that always leaked in corners she couldn't afford to fix. The suite smelled of lavender and polished wood. The curtains were sheer, sweeping to the floor, framing a view of the skyline that felt like a painting from a life she was never meant to live. Joyce stepped into the center of the room and let herself breathe for the first time all day. On the bed was a small welcome card and a glass dish of chocolate truffles. She didn't touch them. Instead, she walked to the mirror. Her reflection blinked back at her. The same lines around the eyes, the faint scar above her left brow from when she slipped mopping the floor at the hospital, the cardigan, the hand-me-down slacks. Nothing had changed, yet everything had. She opened the hotel closet, ran her hand along the empty hangers, and made a decision. Within an hour, Joyce was standing in a boutique on Fifth Avenue that used to feel like fiction. The scent of fresh leather and designer perfume swirled around her. A shop assistant approached, smiling warmly, not out of obligation, but real interest. "Looking for anything special today?" the woman asked, her accent European, her eyes kind. Joyce hesitated. "Something that doesn't whisper invisible when I walk into a room?" The woman's smile deepened. "Then let's begin." Silks, cashmeres, satins. She touched them all. She didn't flinch at the prices. She didn't explain herself. Each piece she tried, she stood a little taller. She chose a soft dove-gray wrap dress, a navy cashmere coat, and a pair of low heels so comfortable they made her want to cry. By the time she returned to the Albrecht, dusk had painted the sky gold. The bellman opened the door like she was royalty. Someone else called her ma'am with sincere respect. She didn't feel like a guest anymore. She felt like a ghost who'd come back with unfinished business. Back in her suite, she took out the robe, the one they laughed at. She laid it gently on the marble bathroom counter, smoothed the collar with quiet reverence, and stared at it. She could still smell hospital disinfectant on it, still see herself holding Jason in her arms, too tired to sit, but too proud to let the world know it. She folded it once, neatly, then she dropped it into the trash bin. No fanfare, no funeral, just silence. She picked up the phone and ordered room service. "Champagne," she said. "The good one, and strawberries, please." The doorbell rang 10 minutes later. As she sipped her first glass, her phone buzzed. It was a message from Langston's office. "Full funds transferred, no delays. You now have full control of the estate." She let the phone fall onto the bedspread, her hands trembling slightly as the bubbles in the glass caught the light. They would never see what she wore next, and they'd never see her coming. Her bank confirms the transfer of full funds. No delays. They laughed when I left, but I didn't leave empty. The scent of garlic and overpriced candles hit her the moment she stepped through the front door. Joyce paused in the threshold, heels soft against the tile, the hem of her silk dress brushing just above her ankles like a whisper. From the dining room, laughter erupted, sharp, drunken, the kind that came too easily when people forgot who they owed. She took one long breath and walked inside. The house looked the same. Same framed prints Harper bought online and called art. Same light fixture Jason had once pretended to install himself. Joyce had rewired it behind his back so it wouldn't short out. Same wine-stained rug under the dining table from Harper's last girls' night. But tonight, it was full of strangers. 8 people around the table. New faces, manicured hands, the kind that lived off sarcasm and spin class. A long charcuterie board stretched across the center, flanked by wine bottles with labels that screamed borrowed elegance. Harper turned first, mid-pour. Her eyes scanned Joyce from head to toe, then paused. Joyce wore slate-colored silk, sleeveless and fluid like water. The neckline dipped just enough to remind the room she was a woman, not a ghost. Her earrings caught the light. Her posture was regal. and she didn't look tired anymore. Harper's mouth opened, then shut. She blinked like she'd seen a trick of the light. Jason stood next. "Mom?" His tone laced with a mix of shock and discomfort, like he wasn't sure if he should hug her or hide the expensive bottle behind his back. "I just came to gather a few things," Joyce said simply. Her voice was calm, even warm, not seeking permission, not expecting acknowledgement. A man with slicked back hair and a gold bracelet leaned toward Harper, whispering, "Who's she?" Harper, recovering too fast, let out a laugh. "Oh, just the help. Family legacy, I guess." Joyce's eyes flicked to her, but she said nothing, just offered a soft smile, the kind that made people nervous because it didn't explain itself. She walked past the table toward the hallway. Her heels tapped once on the wood and then softened as she reached the carpeted room she hadn't slept in for days. She didn't need much, just a few things left behind before the world had changed. Her journal, a locket, the last photo she had of her and Eleanor before the cancer took her. As she returned to the living room, the party had resumed its rhythm, but now she could feel the unease bubbling under the surface. One woman watched her with curiosity, another with thinly veiled envy. Jason tried to bridge the silence. "You, look nice. New dress?" Joyce glanced at him, unreadable. "It's comfortable." That was all. She set her small tote on the edge of the table to zip it shut. And that's when it happened. The sleek black Mercedes key fob slipped from her fingers, landing with a soft thud against the polished wood, right next to the wine bottle and the imported olives. Everything froze. Harper's eyes darted to it, then back to Joyce. "Whose car is that?" Joyce tucked the fob back into her bag without a word. "Wait, seriously?" one of the guests said, eyes wide. "You drive a Benz?" Joyce smiled again, slightly wider this time, just enough to suggest a secret. "Depends on the day." Harper's face flushed. Jason shifted his weight, glancing between them like he'd missed a chapter in the story. Joyce gave them one last look, sweeping, graceful, almost grateful. Then she turned and walked toward the door, the hem of her silk dress fluttering behind her like a flag reclaimed. Joyce drops her new Mercedes key fob on the table. "It wasn't just my name on the deed, it was only mine." The document sat between them like a loaded weapon, thin, unassuming, but impossible to ignore. Andrew Langston tapped the edge of the paper, his gold pen resting beside it. "We double-checked the county registrar," he said. "Your name was never removed. Jason never followed through with the refinance, which means, legally, you're still a co-owner of the house." Joyce didn't blink. Langston leaned forward slightly, as if the truth itself might be too loud. "And, more importantly, the original deed lists you as the primary." The words echoed in her ears like a struck bell, low, resonant, final. She had spent so long walking on eggshells in a house she had quietly helped build, quietly maintained, quietly surrendered. But it had never stopped being hers. She looked down at the page again. Her name, Joyce E. Bennett, in block print, steady and permanent. "What happens?" she asked, her voice steady, "if I choose to reclaim full possession?" Langston's brow arched slightly. "Then I file a motion of reversion. You're within your rights. Given the lapse in refinance and the equity split, they'll be served notice within a matter of weeks, maybe days." Joyce took a sip of her coffee. Black, no sugar. She never liked it sweet. Sweet things had a way of spoiling. "Start the paperwork," she said, quietly. Langston nodded, slipping the document into a leather folder. "You'll want to keep this under wraps, at least for now." "Oh, I plan to." That night, back in her suite at the Albrecht, Joyce sat with her laptop open, a spreadsheet glowing softly in the lamplight. She wasn't interested in stocks or market chatter. What she was looking at were deeds, listings, and foreclosures in the 3-block radius around her house, the one she was reclaiming 1 square foot at a time. She purchased her first property that evening, a small duplex across the street, under a pseudonym, Eleanor Holding Trust. It felt poetic, precise. She bought a second 2 days later. A dilapidated lot next door that Harper had once complained was killing the view. The seller was eager. The offer was in cash. The realtors never asked questions. Money, when clean and clear, didn't come with suspicion, just approval. Joyce moved quietly, like fog rolling in, and with every silent purchase, the neighborhood began folding back into her hands, bit by invisible bit. One evening, her phone rang. She didn't recognize the number, but answered anyway. "Mrs. Bennett, this is Rebecca from Baldwin Realty. You were listed as an emergency contact on a recent mortgage application." Joyce's eyebrows rose. "Was I?" "Yes, from a Jason Bennett. He's applying for a second mortgage on his current property, and we just needed to confirm his cosigner status." There was a pause. Joyce could hear the faint clack of a keyboard in the background. She stood up slowly, crossing to the window. The city lights blinked below her like Morse code. "I wasn't made aware of this," she said coolly, "and I haven't signed anything." "Oh," a nervous laugh on the other end. "That's odd. His file shows an active application. I'll double-check." Joyce smiled faintly, even though the other woman couldn't see it. "Please do. And kindly let Mr. Bennett know that any attempt to mortgage that house without my signature is a legal impossibility." She ended the call and stared out the window. It was starting to fall apart, and Jason didn't even know why yet. The house he thought was his wasn't. The roof Harper bragged about hosting parties under was still shelter Joyce had granted. And the second mortgage? A gamble built on a lie. Joyce picked up her phone again. She scrolled to Langston's number and typed a short text. "He's moving. File faster." She set the phone down and looked at the manila folder on her table. Still sealed, still untouched since the hotel. Inside was every document she needed to end the game. And now, they'd be the ones asking for permission. Realtor calls. "Jason just applied for a second mortgage. He used my name to build his life. I'll use mine to end it." Jason slammed the laptop shut so hard, Harper jumped and nearly spilled her wine. "What's wrong with you?" she snapped, glaring from across the table. Jason stood, running both hands through his hair. He'd gone pale, sickly pale, the kind that doesn't come from stress alone, but from the slow, creeping realization that control is slipping through your fingers. "They flagged the damn mortgage again," he muttered. "Said there's a problem with the title." Harper blinked. "What kind of problem?" Jason didn't answer right away. He just stared at the wall like it had personally betrayed him. "I don't know," he finally said. "Something about partial ownership still being on record. Something about a name they can't override." Joyce's name. She was the ghost in the paperwork, the signature that refused to fade. At that exact moment across town in a private meeting room at Langston's law firm, Joyce held a document in her hands. It was quiet, like everything paused to hear her decision. "I want to reject the application," she said. "Can you block it without revealing me?" Langston nodded. "Absolutely. We'll cite unresolved deed status and conflict of ownership. It'll stop the process dead in its tracks." Joyce slid the paper forward. "Do it." He raised his glass of water in a silent toast to being unerasable. That evening, Jason sat at the head of the dining table, his fork stabbing blindly at a cold piece of chicken. Harper watched him carefully. "Didn't you say you handled all the paperwork last time? Why is this even coming up?" "I did handle it," Jason snapped. "They said it was a glitch." Harper narrowed her eyes. "A glitch? Mortgage lenders don't freeze approvals over a glitch." Jason threw down his fork, metal clanging against ceramic. "You think I'm lying? I think you're hiding something," she fired back. "First the bounced payment last month, now this? You told me we were fine." Jason pushed his chair back violently, standing as the legs scraped across the hardwood floor. "We are fine." Harper didn't move. "Then why does it feel like we're sinking?" Jason stormed out of the dining room, and for the first time, Harper didn't follow. Back in her hotel suite, Joyce sat near the window, watching the traffic below like it was a slow-moving ocean. Her champagne glass sat untouched. Her phone buzzed quietly against the table. Unknown number. She let it ring once, twice, then picked up. "Hello? Joyce?" It was Jason's voice, strained, cautious. "Hey, Harper and I were talking." We were wondering if you could stop by the house sometime this week. She raised an eyebrow. Is everything all right? A pause, a faint shuffle in the background. Yeah, it's just, we thought it might be good to talk, clear the air, maybe revisit some things. Revisit. Like she was a mistake to be negotiated. I'll check my schedule, Joyce said, voice smooth as silk. I'll let you know. She ended the call before he could reply. Outside the window, the city buzzed with 1,000 quiet lives, lights blinking on, deals being made, truths coming undone. She reached for her pen and journal. At the top of the page she wrote, "They only ask to talk when silence no longer serves them." She closed the book gently and stood. It was time to go home. Joyce is invited to talk at the house again. I walked in wearing silk. And silence. She didn't knock. The front door swung open with a slow creak, not from force, but familiarity. The hinges still remembered her weight, her rhythm. Joyce stepped inside, letting the scent of lemon cleaner and roasted garlic greet her like an old, forgetful friend. The hallway had been repainted. Lighter, whiter, clinical, sterile. But beneath the new gloss, it was still her floor plan, her wiring, her bones. Her heels clicked against the hardwood, deliberate, unhurried, like each step had been rehearsed. She wore deep emerald silk, tailored perfectly, cinched at the waist with a thin gold belt. Her coat, draped over one shoulder, shimmered faintly in the late afternoon light. A single diamond stud glinted at her ear. Understated, unmistakable. Jason met her at the end of the hallway, looking like a man who'd expected a storm, but got an eclipse instead. "Mom," he said, blinking too fast. "You look... wow." Joyce smiled faintly, not bothering to return the compliment. "You said you wanted to talk." Yeah, come in. Harper's in the living room." The couch was crowded with throw pillows that hadn't been there before. A curated mess. Harper stood as Joyce entered, clearly caught off guard. Her eyes scanned Joyce's outfit, paused at the coat, lingered on the heels. Jealousy? Insecurity? Maybe both. Harper plastered on a brittle smile. "You look... different." "Different happens," Joyce replied. Jason cleared his throat. "So, we've been thinking about everything, and we just wanted to..." Joyce held up a hand. "I'm not here to argue. I just came to pick up a few keepsakes." Jason blinked. "Keepsakes?" "My journal, my mother's locket, and that photo of Eleanor in the den. She gave that to me." Harper tilted her head. "You're not here to stay?" Joyce's silence was all the answer she gave. Jason exhaled in relief. "Oh, okay, no problem. We actually... well, we were just saying the other night, it feels like we've finally made this place ours, you know?" Joyce turned slowly. "Finally yours?" she repeated, as if tasting the words. "Yeah," Jason said, chuckling awkwardly, "like it's really our space now. Took time, but it's settled." Joyce stepped closer to the coffee table, set her purse down, unzipped it, pulled out a thick, cream-colored envelope. She didn't toss it, didn't slide it dramatically. She simply handed it to him. Jason frowned, confused. "What's this?" Joyce adjusted her coat. "That's not what the papers say." Harper took the envelope and began pulling out pages. "Joyce, what is this?" "An official filing," Joyce replied. "I've retained legal counsel. That house? The one you think you finally own? The deed still has my name. You never refinanced. You never had full rights." Jason's face drained of color as Harper flipped through the paperwork, her hands trembling slightly. This says you're reclaiming possession. What the hell?" Joyce's voice stayed calm, even soft. "It's not personal, Harper. It's just overdue." Jason stepped forward, voice rising. "You can't just... after everything we've done." She turned to him, gaze piercing. "Everything you've done began with my money, my labor, my name. You mocked my robe. Now you'll respect my rights." Harper looked up, eyes wild. "You're evicting us?" Joyce didn't answer directly. She didn't need to. She picked up her purse again, slung it over her shoulder, and turned to the door. Jason scrambled behind her. "Wait! You said you just wanted to talk." "I did," she said. "And I just did." As she reached for the handle, her voice dropped one octave, not cruel, just undeniable. "You should start packing. There's a 30-day notice coming next." Harper looked at Jason. Jason stared at the envelope like it might burst into flames in his hands. And Joyce? She stepped out into the fading light, her heels steady, her coat catching wind like a banner reclaiming lost land. Joyce hands over a legal envelope. "That's not what the papers say." Joyce files an official claim to the house, eviction included. "I was never locked out, I just never turned the key." The lock clicked open with the ease of muscle memory. Joyce stood in the doorway of her house, not as a guest, not as the tolerated help, but as the legal co-owner on file, armed with the key they never thought she'd dare use again. The hallway light flickered above her, a bulb Jason had never replaced. The silence inside was absolute. No clinking glasses, no Harper humming tunelessly while scrolling her phone, no Jason on speakerphone pretending to work. Just the soft creak of the door closing behind her and the whisper of her heels on the hardwood. She didn't sneak, she simply walked. Down the hall, past the living room where her laughter once lived, past the kitchen that still bore the dent in the cabinet she patched, after Harper dropped a skillet in their first year here. She paused outside the storage room, her exile. She pushed the door open and was hit with a rush of dust and cold air, like the room had been holding its breath without her. The mattress was stripped, the shelf was still crooked, the smell was the same, old lavender sachets buried beneath cardboard and resignation. Joyce opened the small cedar box under the cot, her journal, her locket, a silk scarf tucked away years ago, still folded like it was waiting for her hands. She packed slowly, methodically, nothing more than what she'd brought into the house, no spite, no malice, only ownership. In the kitchen, she found a notepad by the fridge, groceries scribbled in Harper's looping script, oat milk, arugula, dishwasher pods. Joyce flipped it over and wrote with calm strokes, "Don't worry, I only take what's mine. J." She tore off the note and placed it on the island, pinning it beneath the salt shaker. Then she walked out, quiet as a closing chapter. The next call came just after 3 p.m. Jason's number lit up her screen. Then again. And again. No voicemail. Just call after call, like he was trying to pull her back through sheer desperation. Joyce didn't answer. She was sitting in a cafe 2 blocks away, sipping espresso and flipping through a book on property law. The sun poured in through the window beside her. Her phone buzzed again. Jason. Still calling. She turned it face down and took another sip. Across town, Jason burst through the front door, breath ragged, eyes scanning the room. "Harper," he called out. Did you see?" Harper was standing in the kitchen, holding the note. She turned it slowly in her hands like it might rewrite itself. Jason's face crumpled. "She came in? She was here?" Harper didn't look up. "You said she didn't have access." "I thought she didn't." "No." Her voice was quiet now, tight. "You said she didn't. I asked you a year ago if we needed to finish the refinance paperwork. You said I'd handled it." Jason swallowed hard. I meant to. I thought." Harper looked up, eyes sharp and unreadable. "Did you ever finish the refinance, Jason?" Silence. Outside, the wind picked up, rattling the windows just enough to be heard. Jason couldn't answer. Harper didn't need him to. Harper confronts Jason. "Did you ever finish the refinance?" It took losing control to see who really owned the floor beneath them. The sound of paper filled the room, pages rustling, drawers slamming, plastic sleeves sliding across the floor. Harper sat in the middle of the living room, surrounded by years of overlooked paperwork, loan agreements, mortgage forms, tax documents. Her hair was pulled into a messy knot, her sweatshirt soaked with sweat, and her knees pressed into the rug that once felt luxurious and now felt suffocating. She had started looking for the refinance form, the one Jason swore he'd submitted. Instead, she found Joyce. Everywhere. On the original deed, on the property tax records, on the utilities setup, half of which were still under a shared household account marked Joyce E. Bennett. "Jason!" she screamed, not looking up. "Get in here!" He shuffled in, phone in hand, his face pale and drawn. "What?" She held up a form, her hands shaking. "You said she was off the deed. You said you refinanced. You said we owned this place now." "I thought I did," he said, voice flat. I don't know what happened." "No, you didn't do anything. You just hoped it would go away. You never followed through, Jason." Her voice cracked. "And now she's coming for it." Jason looked away, jaw tight. "There has to be a way to fix this. We'll call her. We'll apologize." Harper threw another folder across the coffee table. "She doesn't want your apology. She's already filed. I saw the envelope, Jason. It's real." In another part of the city, inside a walnut-paneled office lined with legal books, Joyce sat with Andrew Langston, her posture composed and her eyes sharp. He handed her a folder. "The possession filing was received by the county clerk this morning. You'll have full control of the property in 6 business days unless they mount a legal defense, which, I'll be honest, would be a waste of money." Joyce nodded, but didn't smile. Langston studied her. "You haven't returned their calls." "They weren't calling to listen," Joyce replied. "They were calling to bargain." He paused. "You're sure you don't want to be there when the notice is served?" Joyce folded the folder closed and stood. "I've already been there. For years." That night, Jason stood on the back porch, phone pressed to his ear, pacing like a caged animal. The call rang and rang, then voicemail. "Mom? Please." His voice cracked. "Just talk to me. We didn't know. I didn't know. If I'd realized the papers—" He paused, pinched the bridge of his nose, swallowed hard. "Just, please call me back." He hung up. Inside, Harper stood by the front window, arms crossed tightly over her chest. "She's not going to call you back." Jason turned, his face a war zone of guilt and denial. "She wouldn't just throw us out." Harper laughed bitterly. "Wouldn't she? You used her, mocked her, and then acted like she didn't exist. If it were me, I'd already have the locks changed." Jason sat on the edge of the couch, staring into space. "I didn't mean to hurt her," he said quietly. Harper's expression hardened. "You didn't care if you did." The doorbell rang. Both of them froze. Jason stood first. He opened the door slowly. A man in a crisp navy suit stood on the front porch, a leather messenger bag at his side. "Jason Bennett?" "Yes?" The man pulled out a sealed envelope and handed it over. "You've been served. Court notice of forced eviction. 30-day compliance required." Jason's mouth moved, but no sound came. The man turned and walked away without another word. Harper watched from the hallway, arms limp at her sides. "She played us," she whispered. "She played us the whole time." Jason didn't move. He just stood there, holding the envelope like it might still disappear if he refused to open it. But the floor beneath them had already shifted, and it no longer belonged to them. Jason is served court notice of forced eviction. She called me the help. Now she gets to be the guest. The knock was hesitant, 3 soft taps, then silence. Joyce didn't rush to the door. She stood in the middle of her living room, the soft piano notes of Bill Evans playing low through the speakers, the scent of bergamot and cedar rising from a candle on the credenza. Her condo overlooked the skyline, floor-to-ceiling glass that made even the city feel humbled. Everything around her was intentional, earned. She opened the door slowly. Harper stood there, wrapped in a beige trench coat far too expensive for someone who might soon be couch surfing. Her hair was pulled back too tightly, her eyes red, not from allergies. Joyce didn't invite her in with words. She simply stepped aside. Harper walked into the space like someone entering a museum she couldn't afford to visit. Her eyes scanned the textured art, the floating bookshelves, the untouched leather sofa. "This place is... wow," Harper said. "Really elegant." Joyce didn't respond. She walked to the kitchen and poured herself a glass of sparkling water. No offer. No second glass. Harper hovered near the windows, gripping the strap of her handbag like it might hold her together. Thank you for agreeing to meet. I wasn't sure if you would." Joyce sat. "You needed to talk. I have 15 minutes. Harper flinched at the time limit but nodded. "Right. Okay. So..." Her voice cracked slightly. "I know things have gotten complicated." Joyce raised an eyebrow. "Is that what we're calling it now?" Harper's lips twitched, unsure whether to fake a laugh or cry. She chose the latter. Tears welled in her eyes almost instantly. I didn't mean for it to be like this. I didn't know Jason didn't finish the refinance. He told me he had it all under control. I swear, Joyce, I didn't know we were living in your shadow. Joyce sipped her water. You weren't living in my shadow. You were living in my house. Harper sat down slowly across from her. Look, we're in a mess. Jason's job isn't stable. We've got debt. I've been trying to keep it together, but now with the eviction, her voice broke. We have nowhere to go. Joyce's face didn't move. Not once. And you think I should fix that? She asked. No, Harper said quickly. No, not fix. Just maybe reconsider. Give us more time. We could stay, just temporarily. You wouldn't even know we're there. We'd keep everything clean. I'll even do the cooking. Joyce gave a long, slow blink. That's ironic. Harper wiped her eyes. Please. There was a long silence. Joyce leaned forward, setting her glass down carefully, as if placing something fragile. Do you remember what you called me? Harper stiffened. I don't. At the dinner party. You called me the help. Harper's eyes fluttered. That was a joke. A stupid one. I didn't mean. Joyce held up a hand. I'm not looking for an apology. I'm just making sure we're both clear on who everyone thought I was. Harper's voice dropped to a whisper. I was wrong. Joyce nodded. Yes, you were. Another pause. Harper waited, breath held like a child awaiting punishment. Then Joyce stood, walked to a drawer, and pulled out a folded sheet of paper. She handed it to Harper. What's this? A lease. Harper's eyes widened. You're letting us stay? Joyce didn't smile. I'm letting you rent, guest suite only, month to month, market rate, utilities split, no favors. Harper's hands trembled as she held the paper. So you're not evicting us? Joyce stepped back, crossing her arms. I'm evicting the entitlement, she said. You can stay, but you pay. Like a tenant. Harper looked up at her. But Joyce had already turned away, walking to the window, watching the lights flicker on across the city like stars shifting into place. Start paying rent, like a tenant. They thought they had control, now they read my rules. The lease hit the table with a finality that made Harper flinch. It wasn't printed on plain white paper. It was embossed, spiral-bound, clipped neatly with gold fasteners. Every line was precise, worded by Joyce's lawyer, and signed at the bottom in black ink by one woman who no longer needed to explain herself. Joyce sat across from Harper at the long kitchen island in the home that no longer felt like Harper's. She flipped to the first page and began reading aloud. Rent due on the 1st. Late fee of 12% applies after the 3rd. No subletting, no renovations, no guests overnight without written notice. Harper's fingers clenched around the pen. You're serious about this, she said flatly. Joyce didn't blink. I don't draft jokes. Jason stood nearby, arms crossed, eyes darting between them like he might still wake up from this. Harper swallowed. This is humiliating. Joyce leaned forward, voice low and even. You said I lived here for free, that I was lucky. But I paid this mortgage with my name, my savings, and my silence. Consider this balance. Do. Harper looked at Jason, but he avoided her gaze. She signed the last page with a reluctant stroke and shoved the pen back across the counter. The tension in the room was a fog, thick enough to taste, bitter, metallic. Jason stepped forward. Mom, can we talk? Joyce stood. We are. No, privately. She nodded and walked with him out to the back porch. The sun was setting behind the trees, gold and orange slicing through the branches like fire held in place. The wind was still, the silence heavier than ever. Jason leaned on the railing, rubbing the back of his neck like a guilty boy. You've made your point. Loud and clear. I haven't said much, Joyce replied. You're just finally hearing it. He turned to her, eyes desperate. Why are you doing this? You've got money now. You don't need this place. I don't need this house, she said. But I do need truth. And this place? My place, was built on a lie I allowed to live too long. Jason shook his head. It's punishment. It's a boundary, Joyce corrected. You crossed mine for years. This time the line stays where I draw it. He took a step closer. I'm still your son. And you still laughed. Jason flinched. Joyce's voice softened but didn't waver. I remember it, Jason. The robe, the jokes. You didn't even look ashamed. He didn't speak. There was nothing to say. She turned and walked back inside, leaving him alone with the falling sun and all the things he never questioned. Later that night, Harper sat curled on the guest room bed, formerly Joyce's room, scrolling through her phone. The walls felt smaller now. The bed creaked with every movement, and the hum of the mini-fridge in the corner made her teeth clench. She opened her notes app and began typing, thumbs moving fast. You ever let someone into your home and they end up taking it from you? Thought we were family. Turns out we were just roommates. Some people love control more than connection. She hesitated. Typed one more line. Be careful who you help. Some of them help themselves to everything. She hit post on her private social media story, close friends only. What she didn't realize was that one of those close friends had once been Joyce's coworker, someone who knew the truth, someone who took screenshots, and someone who was going to make sure the internet knew exactly what Harper meant by family. Harper posts a private rant about Joyce on social media. She called me manipulative, I called her landlord. It started with a screenshot. Just a blurry image of Harper's private rant, text over beige walls, filtered with a moody sepia tone, her words meant for a safe circle of pity. But pity has a poor sense of loyalty, and someone in that circle had long grown tired of her smug brunch stories and humble brags about surviving a mother-in-law. The post leaked on Twitter first, then on Facebook. It spread like heat across dry grass. Imagine letting your husband's mom live with you, and she steals your house. That's how Harper framed it, but the comments had other ideas. Sounds like she gave you a roof and you gave her ridicule? You called her the help. She helped herself to justice. Y'all really mocking the woman who put the down payment down? I want her number. Within hours, Joyce's name, quiet, private, untouchable, became a quiet rallying cry in the corners of the internet where underdog stories live and burn. Harper deleted the post, then reposted a watered-down version, then deleted it again, but the screenshots lived. Jason tried to get ahead of it. He reached out to a few friends online, left vague apologies in the comments. There's more to the story. You don't know what we've been through. She's not a saint. But no one cared. The tide had turned. Meanwhile, Joyce sat at the counter of her condo, the city a gleaming mirror beyond her windows. She was drinking mint tea and scrolling through the hundreds of messages pouring into her inbox. Some were personal stories, some were praises. A few offered to represent her if things escalated. A woman from Portland wrote, "You made me believe I could say no again." And then came the message that would change everything. Urban Voice News. We'd love to feature your story in our Sunday community segment. We believe our audience will connect with your strength, grace, and journey. Would you consider an interview? Joyce didn't reply right away. She watched the skyline flicker as dusk fell. The same city that had once swallowed her now glowed for her. She picked up her phone and posted her first public Instagram story. It was a photo of the robe, framed now under glass, hanging in her hallway like a retired flag. Beneath it, a brass plate that read, "Dignity never goes out of style." Her caption was simple, "They laughed at the help. I became the owner." By morning, it had 9,200 likes. She accepted the interview request later that afternoon. The news crew came to her condo with soft lights, a calm anchor woman, and a cameraman who greeted her like she was already famous. She didn't try to glam it up. She wore a navy blouse, silver earrings, and her real story. The segment aired Sunday evening. Jason watched it alone in the guest room, arms crossed, mouth tight. The footage showed Joyce walking through her neighborhood, pointing to the lot she'd purchased next door. The anchor said things like, "Local matriarch," and "Quiet revolution." The comments on the channel's social media page were glowing. Her silence was a sentence, and now it's a mic drop. Can we get a Netflix deal already? I want Joyce as my landlord. She looks like she'd give you grace and hold you accountable. Harper didn't watch. She didn't have to. Because halfway through the segment, her phone buzzed with a name she hadn't seen in months. Mom. She let it ring. Then, it buzzed again. This time, a message. I saw the story. You never told me it was her house. Harper stared at the screen. Her fingers trembled. Then another message, unfiltered. She was right to take it back. I told her she should. Harper dropped the phone. It clattered to the floor, echoing through the guest room, her guest room. The interview airs, Harper's family watches. Harper's mother was the one who encouraged Joyce to claim the house. She packed like it was her house. I let her pretend one last time. The sound of cardboard scraping tile echoed through the hallway like an exit cue. Harper moved methodically, one box at a time, her eyes fixed, her jaw clenched, her presence ghost-like in the space that had once inflated her pride. She wore black leggings, a zip-up hoodie, and no makeup. Her steps were slow but decisive. Joyce stood in the kitchen, arms folded, watching the final act unfold without interruption. The refrigerator hummed quietly. Somewhere outside, a lawnmower buzzed. The world moved on, as it always had, unmoved by personal collapse. Harper paused by the kitchen door, holding a box labeled Bath and Beauty in thick marker. We'll be out by this evening, she said, not looking Joyce in the eye. Joyce nodded once. Take your time, I'm not rushing you. Harper glanced up, surprised. There was no mockery in Joyce's voice, no gloating, just quiet, impenetrable finality. She walked past without another word. Upstairs, Jason was wrapping a cracked photo frame in a sweatshirt, tossing it into a duffel bag. His eyes were red but dry, like someone who'd cried all he could in the car earlier and now had nothing left to offer. He didn't speak to Joyce as he came down the stairs. He didn't even glance at her. She didn't stop him. She didn't ask if he had a place to go. She didn't offer help. Some lessons didn't require a tutor, only time and consequence. The final box Harper carried was oddly light. She cradled it gently as if it held something fragile. Inside were a few cookbooks, an unopened bottle of wine, and a framed print that once hung above the fireplace. This is our happy place. The irony burned. When Harper reached the door, she paused. Her eyes swept the house one last time, the polished wood floors, the faint scuff marks on the baseboards, the light fixture she'd picked out from a magazine and Joyce had rewired behind her back. It used to feel like mine, she said quietly. Joyce walked to the hallway, stopping just short of her. It never wasn't yours, she replied. You just forgot whose it was first. Harper swallowed. It didn't have to end like this. Joyce tilted her head. Number. But it did. Harper stepped out without slamming the door. She didn't say goodbye. Jason followed a minute later, shoulders slumped beneath the weight of his backpack and a box of old electronics. He paused at the threshold, opened his mouth, then closed it. Joyce didn't speak. He nodded. She nodded back. The door shut softly behind them. Silence settled in like dust. Joyce walked slowly through the now empty rooms. Each footstep was a memory. Each breath she took seemed to lift the weight of years off her chest. The living room was bare now, the walls stripped of staged art. The echo of their absence made the space feel honest for the first time in years. She reached the hallway and found it. There, placed gently on the chair outside the guest room, was her old robe, folded neatly, clean, tied with a soft white ribbon. It wasn't an apology, but it wasn't mockery either. She ran her fingers along the collar. The blue stitching at the edge still stood out, just like the night she'd first received it. She took the robe, cradled it in her arms, and smiled. A knock sounded at the door. She turned. A woman stood on the porch, clipboard in hand, heels clicking softly against the welcome mat. Her blazer read, Confidence. Her smile read, Commission. Ms. Bennett, the woman said, I'm from Sable Properties. We're here to help you list the home, as requested. Joyce opened the door wide. Yes, she said, stepping aside. Let's begin. Realtor arrives. Joyce lists the house for rent. They mocked my robe, but I held the keys. The house didn't feel empty anymore. It felt ready. The walls had been repainted in soft pearl gray, the floors polished to a quiet gleam. No trace of Harper's Pinterest-inspired chaos remained, just stillness, light, and the scent of lemon oil and cedar. Joyce stood in the foyer with the keys dangling from her hand, their weight both literal and symbolic. She wasn't rushing this. Some doors deserve to be closed slowly. Behind her, a woman stepped through the threshold, cautious but curious. Maybe even a little awed. Her name was Evelyn Rowe, late 50s, a widow, a high school English teacher whose application had come in with no fanfare, clean credit, modest savings, a handwritten letter about how she loved houses with history. Joyce liked that. Evelyn looked around, eyes catching on the crown, molding the backyard visible through the French doors. "It's beautiful," she said, voice barely above a whisper. Joyce smiled. "It's calm. That's what it needed to be again." "I'll take good care of it," Evelyn added quickly. "You don't need to worry about that." Joyce handed her the keys, not with a ceremony, not with a speech, just the quiet understanding between two women who knew what it meant to protect something. "I know you will." The metal clicked gently in Evelyn's hand. A passing breeze stirred the white curtains in the hallway. Sunlight danced across the floor like it was blessing the exchange. Evelyn paused, then said, "You're not just the landlord, are you?" Joyce tilted her head. "What makes you say that?" Evelyn smiled softly. "The way you look at the walls, like they remember you." Joyce's smile held. "Maybe they do." She let Evelyn walk through the space alone after that. Let her connect with it the way a person does when they're ready to start over. Not because they have to, but because they finally can. Back at her condo, Joyce slipped off her heels, turned on the record player, and filled the room with slow, velvety jazz. The kind that never hurries. That sips time instead of drinking it down. She poured herself a small glass of red wine, opened the balcony doors, and let the cool wind wrap around her like a silk shawl. Then she stepped into her art nook, her sanctuary, and picked up a brush. The canvas in front of her wasn't blank. It had been started weeks ago, but paused while life demanded other things. Now, color called her back. She dipped into a dusky gold and dragged it across the canvas in one long, purposeful stroke. With every movement, her breath deepened, her spine relaxed. Her story, once buried under shame and sacrifice, now moved through pigment and light. And behind her, mounted on the wall in a shadow box with glass so clear it looked like memory itself, was the robe, framed like a medal. The maroon fabric had been gently steamed, preserved behind a soft cream mat, the edges lined with a faint border of navy blue, the color of resolve. The threadbare cuff, the blue stitch near the collar, the fold at the shoulders. It was all still there. But now, it spoke louder than silk ever could. Beneath it was a letter, a single handwritten line in Joyce's deliberate script taped beneath the frame. Dignity never goes out of style. That robe had been mocked, dismissed, treated like proof she was less than. But it had carried her through more wars than anyone knew. It had held her tired body after 14-hour shifts, wrapped her through tears no one asked about, and bore witness when her sacrifices went unseen. Now it bore no shame, only pride. The doorbell rang. A small delivery, fresh brushes from the art supply store. Joyce answered with paint on her hands. No apology. The delivery boy glanced around the condo, his eyes catching on the robe behind her. "That's really cool," he said, pointing. "Is that yours?" Joyce smiled. "It is." As she closed the door, the condo filled again with saxophone and light. No more noise, no more pretenses, just a life of her own making. They'd laughed at her robe, laughed at her silence, laughed at the woman who kept giving and giving, never realizing what she was building under their feet. But Joyce Bennett wasn't just the help, she was the architect of everything. They laughed at the help. I became the owner.